What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to TTP Sports, and we got some big news here in Flyers country. A lot of crap happening earlier today. It just happened left and right, back and forth. It's crazy right now. We thought it was going to be a very quiet day. It turns out to be a very impactful day in the Flyers community. We got the draft tomorrow, but let's get to some of the news that's going on here today. So I got my podcast partner here, a good buddy of mine, Christopher Mayer here from the Flyer Podcast and Flyers Fan Media 93. Chris, how are you doing?
What's up, Amadeo? Appreciate you having me on. It's a crazy couple of, I shouldn't even say a couple of hours. It's really been like an hour and 20 minutes. So, yeah, let's break it down.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of crap that we have to get into today. So, basically, let's start off with the bigger news in the Flyers universe right here. So, we got very unexpectedly, Matt Niskanen has announced his retirement from the National Hockey League, and that just came into a blue like, whoa, where did this come from? We did not expect this whatsoever. We expected from everything that was going on in the offseason press conferences from Chuck Fletcher. They were talking about, okay, let's look for some veteran defensemen right here. And we were all expecting the top pairing of Provorov and Niskanen to stay for at least another one more year, which was going to be the final year on Niskanen's contract. But now we learn the news. Everyone from TSN was breaking the news, talking about all that. And then we hear Matt Niskanen decides he was going to retire. The Flyers were going to let him sit on the decision. He decided to still go with it. I'm going to retire. And all you could say is right here, congratulations to Matt Niskanen on a great career. Won a Stanley Cup with the Washington Capitals. And he really just helped Ivan Provorov last year develop into a better defenseman. And that was, I guess, more than you can ask from a guy like Matt Niskanen. Sadly, he's
Yeah,
not going to be here next year either.
yeah, and for many who remember, that was pretty much what Niskanen was really brought here for. Same with Braun. I mean, they were both brought here to really, just to really help these young guys like Provorov, like Sanheim, like Myers, help them develop, and that's really what they did. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of stuff that can happen and really changes our whole mindset really going into this, which is like weird because everybody's been thinking, oh, well, is there any way they get Hall? Can they get Line? Right? That's been talked about. Now it's like we need a defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
We need a defenseman now, and now they have to go out and get one. Now the thing is do they do it via trade? Do they do it via free agency? They should have around 8.6, 8.5 million in cap. So that's a lot to bargain with, especially in a flat cap for the next 3 years. So we will see what happens. I'm not 100% sure. One thing that you brought up to me before we did this was that Braun is also now available in the expansion since it's a 2-year contract. That's a very good point. Because again, that's something that many have talked about, where it's like if they go for a superstar now, that's another guy you have to protect. That lead that and honestly, really the four guys the five guys you really know you're protecting right now are Hayes, Giroux, Couturier, Provorov, and Carter Hart. Those are the five guys you know, and you can probably throw the six in Travis Konechny. Those are the six you know. So you're leaving like yourself really as Sanheim and Myers. That's pretty much it. So it's like you already lost Niskanen and you already got Braun. That leaves out maybe a guy like Gostisbehere, maybe a guy like Braun. I know I'm going a little bit off topic here, but again, it like every little move kind of leads down the road and really adds up, which is why it makes me think of the Kevin Hayes deal. Like this offseason really reminds me of the Hayes deal because I could see a lot of that happening. A lot of hockey trades, just trades for rights. I think that could happen with Petrangelo. We will see. But again, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But it's been a crazy past like hour and pretty much the last like hour and a half. It's just been nuts.
Yeah, basically. And then all the stuff that's going on with Matt Niskanen. Then we talk about the possibility of the Flyers now having to re-sign Justin Braun because those talks are now going in since Matt Niskanen has retired. And the Flyers did confirm this like directly after announcing that Matt Niskanen retired. They re-signed Justin Braun to a 2-year contract worth $1.8 million annually, and that's $2 million less than he made last year with the Flyers. And I know there's a lot of people around Flyers community that don't like Justin Braun, which is understandable. For the money that he was making last year, he's a bottom pairing guy. And now he's making bottom pairing money, which is better. It's a better contract. It's a good contract by Chuck Fletcher right there. You got 2 years right there. Very cheap contract. He's going to be your bottom pairing guy, most likely with a Robert Haig. And then he's a guy that goes on the penalty kill. He's a stay-at-home defenseman, defensive type of guy. He does his job. You don't hear his name that much often. Then it means he's doing a good job. And I know, like I said, a lot of people don't like Justin Braun, but at this type of contract, it's kind of hard to hate right there because it's such a good
Yeah.
contract right there, a good value.
It's the same thing with Hag. It's like it's kind of hard to hate that when he's, not I know not many people like Hag. I personally really do like Hag. I think he had a really good year. Um, and there's many people that look at him, oh well, his advanced stats are terrible and this and that. I like guys that are team serviceable. It's not just like, can this guy score? Can this guy provide points? There are many roles. As many guys have talked about before, the NHL is a role based league. And you win Stanley Cups, for example, by having role players. You have so many guys that play key roles for teams. I look at Tampa Bay and they have so many role guys. It's not even funny. But like again, it is something that you have to, constantly look at in an off season because you have to remember, what happens. And it's also not just like, what can this do for the ice? It's like, what can this do for my players in the locker room and things along those lines. Obviously, management, things like that. I think one thing that really helped the Flyers, and for Braun himself, really was everybody. You can replace Braun's play because there are many guys that play that sort of role, but you can't really replace his personality in the locker room. So that's another thing to think about. So again, there are many things that have happened. I know we haven't, in going to the podcast, I know we haven't even. I don't even think we've talked about them signing. I think the only ones that we honestly talked about were, I think it was just Alby Cabell, wasn't it? Like we didn't bring up Hag
It was
yet.
mainly like an Albie Kubel and Hag. I think we did a podcast like a couple of
Yeah.
days right before Elliott got re-signed to that contract. So
Right.
it's been an interesting few weeks right here. So you got Nicholas Albig comes back on his nice deal. Robert Hay comes back on his deal. Brian Ellie comes back for another season. The Chuck Fletcher's doing a nice job right here. But then you look at what could happen tomorrow at the draft. We have the draft tomorrow and Wednesday first round tomorrow night. And it's going to be very questionable what the Flyers are going to do because now you have Justin Braun signed. Now you lose the Matt Niskanen the contract at that 5.75 cap hit. And like what Chris said, we're looking at maybe around $8.6 million in cap space. Is there still a possibility that the Flyers maybe shop a guy like a James Van Reems, like a Shane Gosper, just to get some more cap relief right there? And like also what Chris said, do the Flyers go out in that free agency search and go out for a guy like an Alex Petrangelo? Because maybe if the Flyers have that much cap space, they could be in those talks right now because they have the cap space to bring in a guy like that. Even though they still have to re-sign a guy like a Phil Myers, like a Nolan Patrick, but those guys are not going to demand that much money, which probably won't be as big of a deal right there. So the Flyers can still remain in some of these talks, and who knows, a lot of stuff can happen at the next 2 days with the draft. If the Flyers, maybe they make a trade, or they just focus on what they're doing in the draft right here. Maybe they move up, maybe they move down. I see them more moving down the draft more than likely. I want to hear your thoughts on that, Chris. Do you think the Flyers? Do you think there's going to be a trade at the draft? Do you think it's more like just a swapping of a picks, or do you see someone getting moved for maybe like something else, maybe it's a cap relief move? What do you see happening?
Uh, I mean, I'm not really sure. I mean, cap wise move, I think there could be hockey trades. I just don't know what they do now. I mean, they have so much cap space now. It's like, does that, kind of go out the window? Um, for a guy like Krug that you mentioned, I'm not really sure. Somebody actually commented that on one of my Instagram photos was, could they get a guy like Krug? I mean, to me, they kind of already have a guy like Krug, which is kind of what Ghost is. But the thing is like, I'm not really sure what they do. I mean, it's going to be tough. I could honestly see them looking for a guy that's honestly right-handed because I think that's something they need. I'm not really sure you can put Myers in that role yet, that number one D-man role. So you might have to go and look in either free agency or via trade. Maybe there's a guy like Matt Dumba that could be something. There's also that connection with Chuck Fletcher in Minnesota. And then you also have maybe a guy like Brandon Montour, who's been, in free agency as well, who's young. I think him and Dumba are both 26. But the thing is, with Dumba, you'd have to give up something. Again, it's Minnesota, a team rebuilding. You'd have to give up a high end prospect guy like a Brink or a Ratcliffe. Do you want to do that? You might have. You honestly might have to give up definitely a guy like Zamola as well. You'd honestly have to put Zamola on the table for that. So again, I'm not really sure what they do. If it's trade, many things could happen. This might still mean that they trade Ghost. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep Ghost now because, again, the shortage of defensemen. But the thing is, who takes that role? You keep Ghost, who takes that
Hmm.
role? That's my question. It's obviously not Ghost, right? It could be Myers. I don't think it will. It might be. I'm not really sure. I think they probably don't want Provorov playing with Sanheim. I honestly cannot really see that work as a pairing, to be honest with you. I think they're honestly similar players, Provorov and Sanheim. Because it's not like, because you know how Provorov is, he's real offensive. I think Sanheim's the same
Hmm.
way. And, the way that Sanheim and Myers play, I think they maybe want to keep them together. So I guess we will see obviously we'll have to see what happens. But, there are many things that could happen. You think there's any way they go for a guy like Petrangelo?
I can definitely see the possibility right there. It's more in the like of just what happened because you never know if St. Louis wants to shop the rights for him and trade him to another team just to get some type of asset back. And that's the same situation going on with a Torrey Krug right now. Most likely Boston. Who knows if he hits free agency? Who knows if they trade his rights away to another team just so they have a crack at re-signing him before the free agency period opens up, which is honestly not that long after the draft. And like you said too, Matt Dumba, that is also another possibility. Like you said, those ties to Chuck Fletcher in the Minnesota Wild. And also, if you're looking at a team like Arizona, they're going to be going through another rebuild at this point. So there's their top defenseman Oliver Ekman Larson. He's basically a better Ghost, and he has a little bit more of a cap hit. Or I say a little bit more expensive than Ghost, but he's that right-handed defenseman. He can play on your top pairing, and who knows, maybe he can mesh well with a guy like Ivan Provorov. He just got Chuck Fletcher has a lot of options to work with right now. And like you said, I don't see it. I don't see them forcing a guy like a Myers or a Sandheim to go into that top pairing immediately, just because they're still
Yeah.
too young to be in that state. And a guy like Zamula, nowhere close. He has no NHL experience right now. You're not going to throw him up there. Ghost. He's not the same Ghost
No.
either. You're not going to throw him up there. So Chuck Fletcher definitely does have something to work with right here.
Yeah, and I've said it before. It's a good thing he went to Harvard. It really is because this is again, it's such a crazy offseason. And I didn't expect, like we were expecting a slider, and we got to change it
Yep.
up. It's just crazy. I never expected anything like that to happen. But again, it's a little odd with Niskanen though, don't you think? I mean, it's really if you look at his stats, it's honestly like his second best career year since I believe 13-14 with Pittsburgh numbers wise. I believe that year he had 46 points, I believe. He had a really solid year with the Penguins that year. And this year with the Flyers, he had 33 points, 8 goals, 25 assists. And I believe he was a plus 15, excuse me. So a really solid year. Maybe he was injured. Maybe that's why he didn't look so hot in the playoffs. It's already been reported that he had informed the team that he was not coming back. Same with his teammates, obviously the other Flyers players as well. But again, there's a lot to go around it. It's a little odd. I'm still in shock over it, to be honest with you. I didn't expect it at
Yeah,
all.
none of us could
Um,
at this point.
no, it's because everybody expected him to play at least top four next
At
year.
least.
Like that was the expectation, and it was like, do they go for a defenseman? We don't know. We'll see, because everybody had rumored winger, 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 and there was no really talk about, oh well, do they get a defenseman? My thing is like, okay, if I put myself in the situation, I know it sounds silly, but like if I'm playing NHL 20, right? Say one of my veteran, I know you're laughing, but say one of my veteran number one D men retires, right? A guy that's very team serviceable. You know what he can bring. He's one of those, really no maintenance players that I talked about. Maybe he just retires, right? And you lose him. If I'm the GM, I would just go out and trade. I would go out and try to find that guy back. Maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit cheaper, maybe around the same cap hit. I don't know. But that would be my thing. I would go out and look at the trade market. Then, if I can't get anything that is to my mind, I'd look in free agency. So that is something. Obviously, it's an easier thing. It's easier said than done when I'm holding an Xbox controller in my hand. But again, um, it's something that it's like, I'm not really sure what they do because, again, it's so close now. They could do it tomorrow. They could do it on Wednesday. They could do it on Thursday or Friday. They could do it whenever, for all I care. But it's probably more likely that they do it in this span of these couple days here because we don't know what's going to happen yet. And there are a lot of possibilities.
Exactly. Then you go into tomorrow's draft. That can, I wouldn't say it changes the philosophy on going into the draft on what players to select. This mainly just focusing on the roster right now. Now, like, shifting towards, like, the draft thoughts, like, What do you think the Flyers, I guess, mindset going into this? Because Chuck Fletcher, Brent Flair, they did talk about just going for the best player available since this draft is going to be very deep. I would say because last year the Flyers were very heavily focused on drafting a lot of defenseman prospects. Do you think this year they just go for more of that best player available, or do you think they go for more, I would say, forwards in this draft just to fill out some of the more forward depth in the prospect pool?
I still think that they'll go best player available. I just don't know what that is. Best player available, that could be like it's not best player available by what we know. It's best player available by what the team
Mm-hmm.
needs. So it could be a defenseman, it could be a goalie. And I'm not saying that's in the Flyers' radar. I'm just saying in general, best player available could be a goalie for some teams. So I'm not really sure what happens there. I'd have to think they go for a forward. I'd have to think a defenseman in the second round. I'd have to think. Maybe they go forward for the first couple rounds, and then maybe they look trade for D-man.
Maybe.
Maybe they look trade. Now that this has happened today, I don't know if they're going to keep that pick.
That's also another possibility right there. Maybe they trade for a pick and they go. Maybe they use that pick and they acquire that in a trade to maybe get a top guy. Maybe they trade for a rights like a Petrangelo. Maybe they go after and trade for a guy like Dumba. Maybe an Ekman Larson. There's like we said, there's a lot of doors that just opened up for Chuck Fletcher because you need to go
And it
after a
makes
top guy now.
Yeah, you have to. It's pretty much like there's really no debate. It makes me think too. Maybe they trade up and take a
That
defenseman.
could also be a possibility right there as well.
They could go up and get a guy like maybe Justin Barron. I'm not really sure. I mean, I am not 100% familiar with like every player in this draft, but I know obviously like I wonder who Lafreniere is. No, I'm just kidding. But again, like there's so many things that could happen. It's crazy. It really is. I mean, as we talked about before, there was a bunch of stuff that happened today with the NHL. And one thing I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about this now, what did you think of those Vegas jerseys?
It's, it's. I think they're warming up to me a little bit. They are. They're warming up to me a little bit. I think they're solid for what they are. I do like the gold color that they use, but I'll get into more detail when we record the podcast on that because I feel like that'll just be an interesting topic to talk about at the end of
Yeah,
a podcast right there. So,
yeah, especially jerseys because we've had some heated
oh,
arguments
oh
about
god,
jerseys.
I don't want to get started on that in the video right now.
That their third jersey.
I'm not gonna answer that right now because don't want to get into an argument right there. So I think we're getting towards the end of this video right here. So Chris, I want to thank you for joining me here on TTP Sports, and we're just gonna be recording a podcast like a couple seconds right after this. So not gonna say goodbye to you right now.
Yeah, well, again, Amadeo, I thank you for having me on, and again, I notice all the work you are doing. So, yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and I will. I guess I'll talk to you in I don't know 2 minutes.
Definitely right there. So don't forget to go subscribe to his channel, Flyers Fan Mania 93. Follow him on his social media pages as well, Flyers Fan Mania 93. And I'll also link the description to his channel and also the Flyer Up podcast, which we're going to record in a couple minutes right after this video is done. So thank you for watching this episode. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section. What do you think the Flyers are going to do right now with the whole situation with Matt Niskanen retiring? Now you have Justin Braun. Now the Flyers need to look for a top guy. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section, so don't forget to leave a comment down there. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.